We definitely on this program are just about candid, honest dialogue. That's the tone. That's what I picked up from reading your post on the Huffington Post. No pussyfooting on the program, and just being as direct and honest as we can stand. Number one, you are a white woman, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We are very much about words and definitions when talking about racism on the program. You use racism in the title of the post that I saw that I first heard about you. I'm white. Let's talk about racism. What do you mean when you use the term racism? Like specifically, what is your definition for that term, racism?
Well, that's not actually my title. Huffington Post often changes the titles when they publish my posts, but I guess racism to me means white people benefiting from the oppression of others. So the ways that the white community oppresses the people of color. Oh, it's a good question. I've never been asked to define it.
That's big pattern, which I find that is fascinating because it's been my experience being in school, and this is not even just talking about at the collegiate level. I recall in elementary school, my teacher would say all the time, don't use terms if you don't know what they mean. If you don't know what the word means, you shouldn't be using it because you can't be sure of what you are saying. And most of the classes that I've been in, they generally start with a glossary. This is the foundation of what we're going to be talking about. These are the terms. This is what they mean. The textbooks, they tend to have big, thick glossaries at the end of them, and making sure you know what these terms mean. That is fascinating. They have all these whiteness studies and ethnic studies disciplines, and so frequently. I mean, your response, I hear that all the time where people say, well, I don't have a definition of racism. I never thought about a definition of racism. I've even heard some people say, I don't even think having a definition is important. And I find that is a major part of the problem with regards to why we haven't made more progress towards eradicating racism, because if you don't have a definition, I mean, you can say anything. Racism can be anything if it's not properly defined. But making sure I got what you said. You said white people benefiting from the oppression of others specifically being people of color. Did I heard you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So by your definition, go ahead.
I was going to ask how you would define it. Can I ask that? Am I allowed to ask questions?
Absolutely. I have my definition, but before I share it, I just wanted to give one clarifier. So by your definition, only white people can practice racism. It's by your definition, you could not be a non-white person and practice racism.
I think you can have racial prejudice, but I don't believe that there's what people call reverse racism. I think there's just not the power behind racial prejudice for it to become systematic. So that's my thinking.
Okay. Important. And again, that just having a definition stops a lot of that when people go off and say, well, I think everybody can be racist. I think non-white people can be racist. When you actually have a definition, that tends to clear up a lot of confusion about whether or not non-white people can be racist. The definition I use for the term racism, I use the term racism and the term white supremacy. I use them as synonyms, and I use the same definition for both terms. The definition I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think that's an accurate description of the system that we're in?
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering though, so the term dedicated, like I was I'm brought up in a racist society, so I have racism in me, but I wouldn't say I'm dedicated. Like, I really hope I'm not dedicated. I'm not dedicated to oppressing others. So that I'm just interested in that difference. So does that mean I'm not racist if I'm not dedicated to it? I believe that I have seeds of racism in me that I haven't even exposed yet. So, there's a theory that all white people are racist because we were brought up in a racist society to believe that we are superior, right? So even if we're fighting against it, it's still in us. Does that make any sense?
It does. I would point out for folks who listen to the program how frequently our white guests pick on that word dedication and either have qualifiers about that or make sure they get in that they do not think that white people are dedicated to the system of racism.
No, I definitely think there are people who are dedicated. There are definitely white people who are dedicated. I hope I'm not dedicated. I'm really trying to examine my biases. That was the whole point of the essay.
Well, I would say number one, that I think also is a part of the pattern. I think folks who listen to the program, you can note if you've heard other white guests speak with us, where they immediately are talking about them specifically and saying, well, I specifically, I might be white, but I am not dedicated to the practice of racism, which I also think is significant, where the white person might agree with the definition, but they personally don't want to be indicted and included in that group. With regards to the word dedication, I would just say we're not talking about a minor tiff that non-white people and white people have been having for a couple months or a couple years in comparison to the shutdown. This is something that's been going on for centuries, at least. I think most of the people, when I talk about racism, there's no argument. This is a problem that's been going on for hundreds of years all over the world, where the same pattern, even if we're using your definition, white people benefiting from the oppression of non-white people, that pattern being global and centuries long, just that right there, that to me would be the very essence of dedication, and especially when the overall pattern is when non-white people resist. Anywhere in the world where you find non-white people resisting and saying, hey, this is incorrect, we're tired of being mistreated, something should be done about this, the backlash that ensues, where white people in a variety of ways counterattack the non-white people, the people that they've been abusing for centuries, and say, no, we want to maintain this system of white supremacy, racism. We want it to be here. We do not want to see this fall, and they get busy making sure that it stays in place. To me, that is the very essence, that is the very definition of dedication.